Welcome to the Tailored Life podcast, where we discuss practical science and not so common sense to live a life more extraordinary. So, let's get started. Here are your co-hosts, who are also partners in life and business, Luke and Rachel. We're back. Slightly different background. We tried to shake it up a bit for those who are actually watching on YouTube or Spotify. Welcome to our bookcase. It was funny when we ended up putting our house on the market because we're so proud of the books that we have, and they're often about human potential optimization or biohacking or biochemistry or genetics or functional medicine or desk-bound body. Because we're so proud of the work we do and we're so passionate, I remember the staging lady come in and she's like, no, that will not do. We need to get rid of most of these. And we're like, this is who we are. And the whole process of selling a home is about depersonalizing a home to a point where, I've said
and for us, and in particular in our previous house, this was the centerpiece
it was.
of our house.
Yeah, which I actually do miss, but it's okay, it's part of the journey. But books, okay, before we get started, I actually want to share a little bit of a thing that not many people know about you, which is why you don't love written word. So a lot of these books are actually mostly for me, in which I go in and I highlight all the main things, I'll write annotations and I'll earmark them, and then you might go back and just look at the kind of top line. But why do you tend to not enjoy written books?
Don't get me wrong, I love having the physical books. There's something about a physical book that I absolutely love, but being dyslexic from obviously a young age, like I was diagnosed with that, and I've always found it extremely draining to sit there and read a book, and I find I don't interpret the information. And it wasn't until I was really, it was one of my biggest struggles through schooling was dealing with that, because the schooling system didn't understand it, especially at that time when I was going through school. They didn't really have much support for that. I went through a whole bunch of different learning things, but they never really helped me learn the way I learned. And that's one of the reasons why I always struggle with physical tests as well, is because I would interpret the question in a completely different way. I would answer it really well for what I think the question is, but the question is completely off. So the dyslexia has been a struggle of mine for the longest time. And it wasn't until I was probably at uni, I think I discovered audiobooks and podcasts. And this is when all that kind of world was opening up to me and becoming more popular as well. At that point is when I became a ferocious learner, and my Audible and my podcast listening, especially when training for Ironman, I was on the bike for up to 5-6 hours sometimes. So there's like heaps of time just to consume, and that's what I've done. And I've consumed a wide range of books, and super thankful for having the capabilities now to consume the information that I want to, because I'm continuously curious, but I just couldn't digest a physical book.
It must be very frustrating. If your identity is a learner and you're just hungry to absorb, and then again, the standard education system isn't really set up to understand the way that people actually learn and absorb. I don't even get you started about if we knew what we knew now back then, how different that experience might be. Equally for people who are parents listening to this podcast that may not know about even the VARK assessment. So VARK, you can search it up on the internet. It's basically an assessment to see how well you both absorb but also communicate the things that you learn, or you feel the best way that you can articulate yourself in the most optimal way. VARK stands for visual, oral, read, write, and kinesthetic. And so even just getting a bit of a feel for where that sits for you as an adult is really helpful too. And understanding your partner's VARK numbers too, it helps you understand like where you might be going a little bit amiss with your ability to kind of land information and to understand what each other is trying to actually say to the other.
And this is quite a big thing for our relationship as well, is because I have 0 read write and you're like, your highest is read write. So I can't remember what the number is for read write, but I remember it being quite significant. It's your priority way of learning. We have to provide information in a different way to each other. So for you, it's obviously auditory and visual and a bit of kinesthetic for me. And for you, it's really trying to get things pen to paper for you so you can read through it and interpret it.
And it's amazing how frustrated I get when you try to read something to me or even talk to me about it. I'm like, no, we need to sit down and I need to kind of order that in a way that visually, because read, write and visuals really high, and so I can land that information. And it wasn't until I was in university that I started to like literally transcribe and write notes and create pictures and all that kind of stuff that I started to really retain and became an A+ student, because finally I had the smarts, but the ability to put it in my brain and then retain it, I wasn't using the right methodology for me. And so herein lies a really cool way to segue into what this topic of today's episode or podcast episode is about. And it's really around personalization or tailoring the health journey to an individual, because there's no one size fits all. And I know the last several episodes that we've done, we've been establishing a kind of a foundation of what we do, why we do it, and essentially if you can't get those basics right, then adding things on top, you're not going to get the same kind of return on that investment of time and energy to, find the path to vibrant well-being. And so I'm excited to talk about the topics today, because it's something that we are just so passionate about. And I think for us has created a game changer kind of approach at Tailored Health at the clinic, but also in our own journey in becoming who we were born to be. And that's fed into not only our one-on-one journeys, but also our one-to-many journeys, in which we're designing a world first retreat later on this year, which pulls in all of the stuff so more people can enjoy and light up and get those aha moments. And so super excited to talk to you about this topic today.
Yeah, I guess the kind of key thing that we need to really unpack here is we've talked about the fundamentals, as you mentioned in the previous episodes. And if you can't get those, it doesn't really matter. You shouldn't be going any further. There's no biohacking that is going to outweigh all the compounding fundamentals. Because, they are just such a significant impact on your overall health. If you can't get that nailed down, it's pointless. So, oftentimes it's hard to identify, are you doing them right or not? Because what we're finding is, in particular with where we are in society generationally, is we're distracted. So we're bought into technology, we're addicted into these addiction cycles, and nobody is really in touch or doing or being purposeful in the present moment. So we're too much in the past and the future and not truly present. So if you can't be truly present, it's really hard to observe what is actually going on. So what we have found has been extremely powerful for ourselves and our clients is, getting the data behind that to help support you. So having the subjective with the objective. So if you can't figure out the subjective, sometimes bringing the objective in helps clarify a few things for you and actually gives you some reasoning to, that makes sense. Because for the longest time, you just feel crazy, especially when you go to your GP who doesn't understand what's going on, or any health professional for that fact. Like when you've got deep, unresolved issues that something's not quite right, and everyone's telling you you've got a clean bill of health because you're in the normative ranges, which again, that's a whole nother topic, because those normative ranges are preclinical, that's not optimal. But when you're getting told you've got a clean bill of health, you're good, you've got nothing going on. That's extremely frustrating, and it's the struggle that I definitely faced. Got told, you're healthy, and I knew there was things wrong, and obviously I uncovered those. And I uncovered those through clinical diagnostics, wearables, and I just brought data to it and quickly figured out, okay, here's my squeaky areas. Because if I was to do, for example, identifying my intolerances and around food, if I was to just do the elimination thing, I would have never figured out what was really triggering my immune system at that time. Because I had so many things going on. There's like, you want to pick one or two, and then you would think, okay, it can't be that because this is it. And then I wouldn't have figured it out. So that's weird.
Yeah, and it takes time.
Yeah.
So it takes weeks, if not months, sometimes even years of removing a specific thing to start feeling the benefits of the removal. That's a real quick way to spend your life trying to experiment.
Yeah. And we're A-type personalities. We're interested in efficiency. Like I was already trying to figure it out for the longest time, and that's when I was like, I drew a line in the sand. Okay, how can I get to the answers quicker? And that's where data comes into it. So bringing the objective into the subjective to really help empower those decisions.
So what you're saying, if I can summarize your thoughts there, is If you're doing the fundamentals, like we've mentioned in the previous episodes, you're focusing on your sleep, you're focusing on being present and observing, you're focusing on understanding your values, your communication, how you're aligning with the essential intent. You're focusing on water, drinking water. You're looking at ways to diffuse your nervous system, to calm that down, to create more mindful presence, which you're talking about. If you can get into the present moment and really check in on yourself, how you check in on yourself. And if you're doing all these things, and even if you're not, to be honest, if you want to help that journey to better observe or understand your own body and being that bio-curious kind of nature, this is where bringing in the wearables and bringing in some of the diagnostic elements can help give you more aha moments. Because whether you're getting results or not from doing the basics and you still feel a bit amiss, something's still not quite right, or you're given a clean bill of health and it's still something is up, like I can't put my finger on it. You don't know how to check in deeply in yourself, and perhaps you're on the journey to observe, but you want to have some backup. This is where we lean in the wearables and the diagnostics to help remove the guesswork and to help provide a little bit more of a roadmap to people's understanding of what's going on and how they can start to change the levers a little bit to see improvements.
Yeah, and the key thing to note with these as well is often people, it starts to take over their life. And
what does?
The wearables or the diagnostics, because it can create issues in itself. So it's oftentimes we need to, like in particular with wearables, which is live data, which is continually changing and evolving. So for example, if you're wearing a Oura or a Whoop, like tracking your sleep and readiness and well-being in general, often people can be bound to those numbers and start to subjectively feel that way because they had a bad night's sleep and then their Whoop or Aura is telling them to do. But this is where it's the marriage of the two, the objective and the subjective, and we always advocate having the subjective first. So picking how do I feel today, how did I sleep? So if we're looking at sleep for a metric, which is quite a common one, is don't look at your Oura data first. Let's actually check in with ourselves. How do I think I slept? Okay, I had a pretty good night's sleep. I got up once to go to the bathroom. I was out for most of the night. I was pretty restorative. I feel good. I think I'm about a 89. So picking a number before it shows you your number. And if the number shows up lower, it's like, no, I feel like an 89.
That's interesting. What do I think that caused that result?
Exactly. It's about being curious. And then you can look into the metrics and it might give you a few answers. It might be your body temperature is raising up or your respiration rate's raising up. And that could be a sign that potentially a cold is coming in. So you might have slept well, but your body is starting to show signs of some illness coming in, so it could be getting sick.
Or if you're a female, you might just be that part of your cycle where your temperature is naturally raising up due to the flux of the chemicals.
Yeah, so it's just trying to really tease out what is going on, and the more you dive into this, the easier it is to understand, but it's just making sure you put the subjective first.
Now I want to actually pop up a little bit. We talk about subjective and objective. We're making the assumption that everyone knows what that means and are inferring it from how we describe it. So let's be a little bit more clear around what these two terms mean. So subjective is essentially how you're feeling, and there's no defined measurement associated with it. It's often the soft feelings or the intuition or things that can't really be measured in ones and zeros. And so that's the subjective. You can't quantitate it. It's called qualitative. Again, it's a little bit more ethereal, hard to pin down with a number. Objective is where you bring in the numbers. You're able to measure it in some degree, and it's mostly accurate or reproducible. May not be, but either way, there's a number around it. You can use the term quantitative as well to be analogous to objective, and then quantitative means that you literally can measure the quantity. There is a 1 and 0 or some other digit associated with it, and it's something that you can track over time as a specific measurement.
Yep. But with the subjective, you can add a number to it to give it that kind of correlation between the two. So,
can you give us an example of how you would create an objective measure to a subjective feeling?
So that's exactly what I said before. So I predicted my sleep would be like an 89, and it may have came up lower because maybe it came at a a 80 instead of an 89, and maybe that was because my temperature was just slightly rising and my respiration was going up, and I might see a little diminishment in my HRV. We'll get into these metrics a little bit later, but long story short is my metrics are going in a negative trend, but it wasn't enough to really impact my sleep as such, but there was a little bit more disturbance in the night, so therefore I wasn't aware of that, but my body's starting to go through a transition period into becoming sick. So it's trying to tell me to take it a bit easier and be kind to myself. And so yeah, like it's trying to identify these things and trying to figure out what the clues between why it's lower than you think it is or why it's higher than what you think it is, and try not to marry yourself too much to that objective if you're subjectively feeling good.
Yeah, and we also do this in the clinic too, or with one-on-one clients. Through whether it's our actual meeting or session with them, or it's even our weekly pulse check, which we'll send out as a ranking. And so did you want to take us through what you actually measure, or get them to measure in a subjective way, but give a number to it so we can track improvement or change over time?
Yeah, so we do 7 subjective questions. So I was working across the kind of 4 pillars. So we go, so first of all, we start with energy, because energy sets the tone for everything, right? Like, how are you feeling in energy today? And with these measures, we're looking at it across the previous week. So since when we last saw them, so we may be seeing this client once or twice a week, or it could be just the weekly kind of check-in. Every client sees us on a different frequency, so there's no hard and fast on that. But essentially, when we check in with them, we're going through these 7 key questions. So energy levels is number 1 on a 1 to 10 scale. 10 is always good. And one thing I love about this 1 to 10 scale is I always advocate to not use 7. Because I find 7 is that safe number. It's good, it's not too good, it's like settling. And so I always advocate for the clients not to be able to pick 7 for that reason, because I don't want safe numbers. But what I do enjoy is you get the old client that is super precise, and it's a 7.3. It's like, sorry, maybe not a 7.3, it's maybe an 8.3. And they get right into the points where most clients will go like, it's an 8 or a 5, may get a 5.5. But oftentimes you don't get the 0.2 or 3. Some clients work in that way, and they're very number orientated, and it's really precise, and they like to be precise, and that gives me clues into who they are as a person and how I can actually support that person, because they like that precise nature. And yeah, so the first question is obviously, as I mentioned, is energy, so 1 to 10. Then we go into mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, and movement. So when we're looking at mindset, we're looking at a growth, positive mindset towards positive change. When we're looking at lifestyle, it's balance between work and life, and just generally feeling that balance in your life, however you define balance. Then we're looking at nutrition. How are you eating in regards to you? Because all these questions are related to yourself. It's not related to the ideal. It is your perception of your nutrition.
And whether or not you feel like you're nourishing yourself, or that the food that you're eating is giving you the energy that you're looking for, or whether you're craving and finding you're crashing as well.
Yeah, and this is where nutrition is an interesting one. Out of all the questions that we go through, this is the one I find changes the most. So often clients will come in and they'll rate themselves really highly with their nutrition. But as we unpack these things and educate them around nutrition, they realize, oh, there's so many things that I wasn't thinking about. So this number is probably the one number that kind of trends down before it trends back up. But it's an interesting thing to monitor as the education increases, because there is so much nuances in nutrition
that we don't know. Yeah. And so, as you say, like it's until they actually uncover, like, oh, what does this actually mean in my life?
Yeah.
It just blows my mind how little people actually know around how food can be a medicine, is a medicine, and how largely is never treated as such.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I always find it quite interesting. And this is what these numbers are. These are a check-in on the day of what has happened previously. So it doesn't matter that they go up and down, because they will, because the nature of life, regardless if it's nutrition or not. If you have a bad night's sleep, it's going to impact your mindset, it's going to impact your energy. But yeah, so we'll get to that, because sleep is one of the questions. So then we go from nutrition to movements. Obviously, we work through the 4 pillars with energy, through the 4 pillars, mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement. Then
if you want to hear more about our 4-pillar health philosophy, I think our last episode actually talked about that quite in detail, and you've probably heard it knitted throughout the entire episode generally, because that's the sort of the pillar of what we do.
Yeah, and then from there we're going into looking at pain. Where do you have much pain in your body at the moment? So on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being good again, so pain free, no pain, I'm good. because that's an interesting thing to unpack, because there can be a whole bunch of issues going on there, whether it's coming from a movement perspective, coming from a nutrition perspective. Pain can show its way in different ways, or mindset is another good example. Then finally, we're looking at sleep. So on a 1 to 10 scale, so for those of our clients that have an Oura or a Whoop or some other quantitative technology, they'll often bring that into it and say what that number was, or say how they feel it is as well. But yeah, so those are the kind of 7 key points we check in on with the client.
Yeah, and so that's how we take those subjective, mushy elements and then provide an objective number which we can track over time.
Yeah, and the key thing with this is it gives us as practitioners the insights into where they're currently at, which helps us guide that session, because we don't have a pre-programmed session that's going to be, that's exactly what we're going to do. We try to be very nimble and moving with the client at the time. We may have a rough draft of a plan of what we want to do with that client, but that's very malleable. And what I love about this assessment and the check in particular is not so much the insight it gives me, which I do enjoy, but how it gets the individual curious around how they actually are, because they don't think about it until they sit down at the start of the session and we start going through these questions like, oh yeah, my energy is really low today. I guess that's because I didn't sleep well last night because my toddler kept me up all night. Yeah, okay, and then that's impacting my mindset. And then, the kind of conversation builds upon that and they start to become more aware, a bit more curious around what's going on, and then bioliterate as a result over time, if we repetitively do these things.
And this is where real health is slow health, and I want to raise 2 points around this. When we used to run our 12-week reset program a couple of years ago, which was our most popular program, we do a similar version of this these days, but it brings in the diagnostic side of things. But when we used to do that, we'd do the same things. Every week there'd be a measurement, and right at the end there'd be a final measurement. And we would plot the changes to these 7 kind of key axes or criteria, and every single time that increase. But the fascinating assessment is overall, you'd ask them after 12 weeks, like, do you feel like you've made progress? And they'd be like, oh yeah, I think I have in some areas. And it wasn't until you actually showed them how they've subjectively and objectively measured their progress over time that they're like, oh my God, yeah. And summarize all the things they've learned, all of the changes they've made, which when you see the changes being made consistently as a coach, as a mentor, it makes me so proud. But then what shocks me is that people don't realize what they've done, and to literally spell out, look at all of the changes you've made to your life. Look at how you've given yourself more language to describe, like how your relationship has improved. And the irony of the human condition is that scope creep and health creep is so insidious that whether it's an upward trend or a downward trend, you don't notice until you look back.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's a frustrating process, but the beauty of what we do is we help give people those aha moments and track how they're actually going. And then over a 6-month period, which to be quite frank is really, I think, our minimum amount of time we work with people. And of course, that's why a lot of our programs are 6 months long at minimum. But over years, people lighting up like, wow, if I look at where I was when I started with you guys, it is like night and day difference, and this is how I'm feeling.
But the other thing that we've found quite powerful for those with partners.
I'm so glad you went there, because that was the second one I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, with partners and kids, that's where we often hear the most glowing references. Oftentimes, as you mentioned, the individual is so immersed in their life, they don't see the changes. It's like, like you said, how it's either upward or a downward trend. For example, when people put on weight, they don't know until all of a sudden they're overweight. They jump on the scales like, where did this 5-10 kgs come from? They don't know until it's measured. And because it's just those small little things that eat each day that just stack on top. And it's often having that external perspective from that loved one that has to deal with you each and every day when you're moody or low energy and just getting angry because you're not eating the right things for you, or you just got a terrible mindset and you don't have the right practices and tools to help support you. And when we shift, they just become just glowing references. They're just so thankful because their lives are made easier.
Yeah, I remember the day I was talking to one of our clients' partners, And she mentioned that the kids had actually, she overheard, I think their daughter, say to their dad, "Dad, like, you are so much more even, you're not getting angry as much, and you seem to have more energy, and like, you're way more patient." And it's those moments where that's why we do this.
But at that time, this is important to state, at that time, that client didn't think they were making much progress.
I know.
And they had no clue to the progress they made until they heard from their partner and their kids actually reminding them that they had said that, because they still were just oblivious to how far they progressed. And we didn't just see it from their subjective nature as well, we saw it through the objective measures. So when we pull this all together, it's a bit of a game changer, really.
It really is. But as health, business, life performance coaches that we are, again, what's hard on us is trying to get people to trust the process, to have faith that every week they're making progress, particularly when we work with people. Actually, generally, people want fast results. We are conditioned in this world to want those fast results because, for one, we don't like the discomfort of making change. We've talked about how our bodies and our minds and evolution doesn't want change. We want to be settled in who we are. Our body is conditioned to like and be lazy. If it's comfortable and surviving well enough, it's happy. It doesn't want to change the equilibrium.
I think that's part of with what we do as well, and why they often don't notice, is because we're looking at what is the minimal viable change we could make to this individual so they get the best benefit. Because we're looking at those real quick ones that make no impact to their life as such, for the most part. And yeah, because we're just working on the micro and just stacking those little micro things that impact the macro in the end, yeah, they just don't feel like they've done anything because they haven't done that high intensity hour session every day and had a restricted diet.
And not eating like spinach smoothies or like adding all these sort of yuck stuff to their diet. But it's always rewarding when you start to see them turning the corner. And often it's around that 3-month mark. But I think one thing that I learned, there was a wonderful quote that basically said, if you can consistently do one thing or stick to one thing for long enough, you will see the reward. And so I think the paradigm shift that's so important in our journey with the work that we do is helping people learn how to trust the process, to unwind or untether their paradigm or their programming that real health is fast, because it's not. They didn't get to where they are fast. It's taken time to get to that point. And so unwinding all that and getting them to a place of vibrant health will take some time too, but that's for life. That creates new habits, new paradigms, new programs in their behaviour that will change for the trajectory of their entire life.
And that's what we're passionate about, is that sustainable change. Like, I have been in this industry long enough and seen all the roller coasters that people go on, and I'm not interested in being part of that. I'm here to support people make change full of life. Yeah. We're in the game of life. And let's play it to our best.
Yeah, and it's actually worth playing, because it is life or death. This is the game. You get one. And there's a beautiful quote, again, I bring it up, that a healthy person wants 10,000 things. A sick or unhealthy person only wants one. And there's another one that says that every person is born with 2 lives, and the second one starts when they realize they actually only have one. Yeah. And so I know I look at you when, say, we're in a chat with our friends or family, or they reach out and they're saying, I'm starting this 12-week program where, we're working out 45 minutes a day. We've got this diet, this plan to drink where it's green smoothies or a vegan, blah, 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 blah. And it's funny, I always look at you, and all it takes is just that eye contact. And we're like, the beautiful human condition. Yeah. But that's okay.
Yeah. And we just sit there in the wings waiting for the moment where they ask for our advice, because it's funny though, the ones that you love and spend the most time with often forget to ask for the help from, the specialists in the field, but it's just part of the process of their learning, their development, and I've learnt not to buy into it or just to let it slide and wait for them to reach out, because you can't change somebody that doesn't want to be changed. Yeah, and what we also talk to our kids about is when they're getting advice about health from kids at school or family member friends or family members or what it is,
and they give us a rebuttal from a acquaintance or a person in their life that really is not in a good place.
Yeah.
Like overweight, unhappy, basically yo dieting, like all of these things.
Mentally unstable.
And they get this advice from these people in their lives, and all we say at the end of the day is, look to who you're modeling. If that person you feel is not the epitome, or at least striving and successful in their path to health, they're not lean and strong and thinking clearly and in command of their lives and have goals, care about their well-being, care about communication with their loved ones, have good relationships,
and emotionally stable as well.
Emotionally stable. Look to those people in your life and see what they're doing. I would hazard a guess that for the most part, they're actually the type of people that are doing the right types of things, that are getting themselves to a good place. Do not put a lot of weight with people that still haven't got there, because trust me, they probably haven't got the right answer either.
And especially those that have never been there.
That's very true. That's very true.
Sometimes people have gone there and things have slipped, but they understand the fundamentals and how to get there. They may have just lost the will to some extent that needs to be regained and reignite that fire. In particular, you see it with a lot of athletes where they get into this spiral where they keep the same nutrition and habits that they had while they're training they could get away with, and then all of a sudden it all comes back on. And they know what it takes. They just need to get that mindset back into place so they can get back to that place.
And the behaviours of, okay, don't want to get that second helping, or maybe I need to have a different approach to fluid or whatever.
Yeah, but the people that we're often talking about with the kids has never been there. Yeah, it's definitely trying to model those that you want to be or have seen success in the past. But again, this conversation is coming around how you can get more in touch with yourself. So firstly, obviously modeling, that's in that kind of subjective nature where you assume that, but they're not you. They're a completely different person, completely different genetic makeup. Maybe because it's a family member, it might be close genetic makeup, but for the most part, they don't have the same biochemistry as you, or necessarily the same environment as you. So there's a whole bunch of elements in which we need to start to unpack and unwind, especially if we got to this point where we're trialing things, we've got the fundamentals sorted, or we're trying to get the fundamentals sorted, but something's just not quite right. How can we really take a deeper dive?
Remove the guesswork.
And remove the guesswork, because, God, if you are truly interested in speeding things up, this is the way to do it. Because you're personalizing it, you're specializing it towards you, not the general kind of normative ranges.
Yeah. And it's amazing just how motivating it is. Once I think there's a lot of energy, if I just think about all the mental energy I've wasted and time I've wasted going on Google or Bing or whatever your search engine of choice is and Googling something, which, honest to God, it gives more, it raises more questions than it does answer. And if you're curious about a specific way of eating, or you're wanting to lose weight, or something so generic, which again, there's a huge industry that lines its pockets for people desperate to lose weight or desperate to experiment with different things. But wow, how much of a mental relief it is when you actually know, oh, okay, genetically, my base code will always be squeaky in this way, and I know to look out for the symptoms should things go amiss and my genetics actually be expressed into my life, or how to avoid it, or how to fix if you are already having those symptomology. And so, okay, this is where we light up, because we're so excited about this stuff. I talked about wearables, which give either near or real-time metrics about what's going on, which helps to solve the problem of when people really struggle to check in with themselves or provide a roadmap of where they've been, and when they look back, oh, actually I am seeing improvements. Wearables can be so incredibly powerful. There's one, and please guide me outside this if you want to defer to a different topic, but there's one wearable that's a little bit more transient, goes into our arm or into our sort of our belly, that we've actually found one of the most profound short-term aha mechanisms for people despite any prognosis that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about the continuous blood glucose monitor, or CGM for short. So yeah, it's essentially a small, like it's an implant, but it's painless. It's just like a really thin little kind of wire that kind of goes just into the, and most of the time you wear it on your tricep. And for what we've found, as you said, like clients, because everyone eats so differently, everyone's lifestyle is so different, you can learn so much about glucose, and glucose has been linked to longevity as well. So having balanced glucose levels is going to be extremely powerful for living a long, healthy life. So if you can't regulate your glucose, you're essentially shortening your life. So it's a very quick way. This is a 14-day use device. Depending which brand we go with, if we're looking at the Freestyle Libre, which is done by Abbott, or if we're looking at the Dexcom, which is the two major competitors in the market. And yeah, and the G7 has just come out in that. Yeah, Freestyle Libre, Dexcom, G7 are the kind of two primary ones. Essentially what we do is we use these devices to help people get curious. And we have no cues at the start. We're just eat like normal, because it's a 14-day period. And we get them to eat like normal for generally the first 14 days, because there's going to be a lot of variability across that first 14 days. And then in the second 14 days, we'll generally, because we'll get them about 3 devices. In the second 14 days, we will start to highlight to them what we've seen in the first 14 days, so they can start to, I see that now. And then in the third round is generally when we would come in and we would really make some changes to their diet and actually show them how they can keep it balanced.
Yeah, and it's not even significant changes. It might be small nudges to the way in which they're layering specific food groups or food types, or adding movement, or other kind of attributes that it's not designed. Yeah, it's not designed to like move mountains. It's designed to do very precise changes to some of the levers, so they can start to see, wow, these small little adaptations that do not create huge habit shifts can make a profound impact to the way my body is receiving the glucose and or processing it.
Yeah, to give you a quick example is, if you want to have your dessert, make sure you have it at the end. Have some good fat and protein first, and then you can potentially have that dessert, and it's going to impact you a lot less than if you had that dessert first. So it's just trying to understand that organizational structure, and again, understanding the individuality, which is the key thing, because there is so much variability amongst it. For example, like you respond a lot more to certain food groups than I do. We might have something like grapes, and your response will go a lot higher than mine, where mine will be a little spike, but it will level out a lot quicker, and I wouldn't crash as much as you do. And you can quickly start to see that kind of variability in between different clients. But then we've also done in that round with individuals, but then doing it in a group setting is quite powerful as well. So when we've done it at retreats, this was a real eye-opener for so many people, and it's really cool to do it in a retreat setting, because we have like 70 to 100 people in a retreat, generally speaking. And the diabetics in the group were just like blown away. They were so thankful, because they often feel like the odd ones out, because these devices are designed for diabetics. These are not really designed for general population. We use them off-label. So it's important to note too, because these are how they dose their insulin and understand how much insulin they should have, and how they make sure they're staying in the healthy ranges. So it's really critical for their life, but we're using it to optimize health instead.
And to improve biocuriosity and bioliteracy.
Yeah, keep in mind these are off-label uses, but more and more people are starting to use them off-label, because it is so powerful, as I mentioned, for longevity and just health in general. Yeah, in the retreat setting, they're just beyond thankful. The diabetics are like, I don't feel like that weird one now. The thing on my arm that everyone asks me about, everyone's wearing it, and just they were beyond thankful. They just look around and they're just like, I don't feel everyone's like me right now, and it's just that reminder to them every time they're walking around, and they can just see underneath the t-shirt that little CGM, like, cool.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. So I want to be really clear on this. We've done a variety of events, and a lot of them that we've done to date have been other organisers having some other type of retreat, whether it be working on founders, startup kind of entrepreneur retreat, whether it be health and safety, whatever it might be. There's some kind of overarching program, but we're brought in to basically create this curation of an undercurrent wellbeing experience. And so we're there to play a little bit of a composer to be able to craft a foundational experience where all the participants are alert, they're aware, they've got energy to absorb what they're being taught throughout the experience. They've got ways in which to create more of a gamification throughout the experience too. And so working with these event organisers, planners is so much fun. And so that's what we do as one part of our business, but we're having our own full tailored health retreat coming up at the end of this year, which is it's a pure tailored health. It's bringing all the stuff that we talk about throughout our podcast to a 4-day, 3-night experience, which is actually prolonged to a sort of an entire 5-month experience. We'll talk about more at a sort of a different point, but that's where it gets really cool. But just to talk about this particular situation, we got to play.
Yeah, and like with that our retreat, we're obviously really excited by that, and like just to give you a bit of insight into it, there's nothing like this.
It's world first.
World first. What we're going to be doing is going to be pretty epic. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, coming back to what we've done with other retreats and events, and how we've helped support that nervous system and making sure people are engaged and getting the most out of their experience. Yeah, like the CGMs are just so powerful. Like people, and the other thing with some of these events, we've also been in charge of the nutrition as well. So this is where it came really powerful for a lot of people. That like, because we curated with a private chef, got all the food, and it was delicious.
It's
everyone,
ridiculous.
And we had to curate it. It was quite an intense feat to achieve. So I brought my friend who was a private chef, and this event that I'm thinking about in particular, and we had so many different food preferences and requirements we had to police for, and I wanted to make sure it was an inclusive meal, because obviously I'm restricted in what I can eat. So, and it's always frustrating feeling like you eat that weird one that's, has this got gluten, has this got dairy in it, is like,
Well, don't even get me started on me being gluten dairy free at board meetings. Oh my, okay, that just fired me up, but I digress. It's frustrating when you're here trying to eat mindfully and nourish yourself, to be attentive, to have the energy, to not require the candy that's on the table, and you're not.
The fact that they put candy on the table drives me mad. It's like,
it really does.
It's like sweets all day, and coffee all day.
And you're supposed to be governing large organisations, and as a high-performing team, if you haven't got that cognition, that command of your ability to navigate these complex board packs and engaging with strategy, high-level strategy that's looking at multi-millions of dollars, and you got candy on the goddamn table, like. Welcome to low-performance teams.
And you've probably been on a plane like since 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
And
anyway, that's a different point. Bring up a pet peeve.
But that's another thing we do, is we work with boards to help improve that, so they actually can make good decisions that impact many. And
is inclusive. So getting back to, your task with our private chef around how to curate the smorgasbord that was inclusive.
Yeah, so it was really looking at who was coming and how can we bring in health and keep that blood glucose stable throughout. And so just kind of remember the preferences we had. We had gluten, dairy, vegan, vegetarian, halal, nut allergies. There was a couple others, and I can't remember what the other ones were, but yeah, it was pretty challenging to curate all that and make it feel like there was enough for everybody to eat, that everyone would enjoy. So we made sure none of those foods or crossovers were there. There were obviously choices you can make. For example, the vegans wouldn't have the meat. But we made it inclusive besides that, where everyone could just grab what they wanted and just enjoy themselves. And yeah, it was beautiful to see, because we had access to the data, those that shared that with us. And just to see the data was just stable.
So beautiful.
But the interesting point came in is when they went home. So when they went home, their data was like, whoo, whoo, whoo.
Yeah.
So they went back into the classic cycle of these energy crashes and spikes.
Yeah.
And that's when they realized, it was actually quite special what we did in the weekend. And not only was I alert throughout the whole conference like I've never been in the past, or a retreat, but as soon as I got home, I'm back into my patterns that I was previously. There was obviously something in which we were doing there, and we were obviously curating that orchestra quite intentionally.
Yeah, and what I loved about that is they had no cognition of the food they were eating was any different. Because then it's not like this was foreign to them around what they were eating or how they were eating. It's just small changes that can make profound impact. And so
that was also something they rated as well. Like at the end of it, they're like, this food, wow.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it. And that was the best food I've had in a really long time. Like, to even go to an event, generally, the fact that we created and curated it was even better. But to go to an event that even us as the curators were like, holy cow, the private chef nailed it. You nailed it with the nutrition dynamics and the menu plan and all that kind of thing. And then to have people say, I have never, ever in my entire life felt so alert, so engaged, so able to actually grab my mind and contribute and absorb all the information that I did and feel really content and then sleep really well. And so I just think for us, we nailed it and we keep nailing it. So it's not something that just happens one-off. We've been able to reproduce this in such a powerful way. And the reason why I love the CGM being able to do it afterwards is because you're right, from a dashboard perspective, when we could see this sort of hive dash of what's going on with all the participants that shared and agreed to be a part of this sort of experience with us, the aha moments from that, even just within that 14-day period, even the 3-day period, I think was like like a 5-year counselling session within a weekend. Like, finally I get it. I'm starting to understand how this machinery works and how to get the most from it. And yeah, I will never forget just the eye-opening, even for me personally, around what that means to my body and how I recognise certain feelings, especially flighty feelings. And also what our wind down tea did to me. Our favourite tea, it's this beautiful blend of licorice and vanilla and peppermint. And I used to have it before bed. And I didn't realise, I always get this like flighty feeling, like when I was winding down and we were in bed and we were chatting about our day, and I get this fluttering.
You wouldn't have the tea in
feeling.
bed, you'd have the tea after dinner sort of as well.
So it was before bed, and we love that tea. But I have this sort of consistent flighty feeling, and it wasn't until I had the CGM installed I could see that it raised my blood sugar quite a lot, and then it stayed there, and I was like, that's what that flighty feeling feels like.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it was no surprises really, because we know licorice supports cortisol, which is going to bring up your glucose, and so there's a stress response to that. It's a supporting response. Licorice is great, but just having it earlier in the day.
Yeah, but sometimes you just don't know how much is in these things.
Exactly.
But is it actually inferring any change? But in this case, it
definitely
did.
Yeah. And so that was a really good insight. And it's not something we stopped having. It's just making sure we change to the time when we have it.
So that's been a powerful wearable generally, in addition to all the other wearables that we've tried to track in bits and pieces.
Yeah, we've been in a very thankful place. Like, well, we've created the opportunity, and with one of our projects and what we're doing was we've scoured the earth for the latest and greatest wearables, clinical diagnostics. We've done it all for the most part. Anything that we see of value, we have tried and tested, and it's so much fun to do. It's something we love to do. Like, we had a new device just yesterday that we just put on our beds, which I'm really looking forward to testing out. But we've had this unique opportunity that not many people get to actually not just have one, but have a variety of them and compare and contrast and see from a UI perspective, a user interface. Is this easy to use? Will I use this? Will a client use this? What provides quick and easy insights? What is something I'll continually come back to? Because these things can be great to start off with when motivation is high, much like a workout, like when you're going into those high intensity circuit based workouts where you're doing an 8-week program to lose 10 kgs or something. It's the same kind of concept. Your motivation's high, so you do it. But what I love the most about what we've done is we've got to figure out what wearables will we keep coming back to, and what wearables is just not worth your time. And we've been able to test those out, and it has been a super, technology lights us up, so we love it. And I know not everyone's like that, so we're always looking through the lens of our clients. What will our clients love and use?
And so for us, and I think the next natural step is perhaps to go through the list of the wearables that we've tried. We'll list off as many as we can remember. Yeah, that's true. But to your point, there's a term called zero UI in product development, and zero UI basically means what is the least to zero number of steps that are additive to add something into your life. So if there's some type of device that, for the most part, it doesn't add any extra steps, So how close to zero UI can we get?
Yeah.
And UI stands for user interface, or there are a variety of other terms for that, but that's essentially the goal, is how do we integrate these wearables in a way that just happen in the background. You don't have to do anything extra, but in the meantime, either we're tracking it, which is again how we work with our clients, is that we have this master dashboard that we can see what's going on, and then our job is to change the levers. So they got to go about their day in the most normal way possible, but then we're making these slight changes to their lives to have the compounding impact.
An example of that would be potentially moving their coffee from first thing when they wake up to maybe an hour and a half after waking up, or it might be shifting their protein with the fat and protein with their carbohydrates in their meal. These really small things that can make a profound difference, especially when you compare that with the quantitative data, the objective data. We can really see, okay, that worked. Especially if we can repeat that day on, day out, and then they can start to say, oh, okay, it is working. They don't even need to worry about that because we're in the background just monitoring all that. But yeah, so to give a good example of how we've gone through these technologies, it's like sleep wearables. We're always on the hunt for good sleep wearables, and we've tested, I'd say, the majority on the market, if not, like the main ones for sure. So we've gone from looking at EEGs, so we've used clinical devices like the Dream 3, which is like a $3,000 kind of device, which is a headband that tracks your brainwaves, which in fairness is the only way you can really truly track sleep directly is through your brainwaves.
And sleep stages specifically.
Sleep stages specifically, because all the other, I guess, sleep trackers are doing it through an indirect measure. So you're not actually, if you don't have the brainwaves, you can't understand the true cycles of your sleep. So you've got to keep that in mind when we are looking at these trackers. It's not accurate. But in saying that, going to a sleep clinic or wearing an EEG headband, so uncomfortable. Like, it just locked up my neck, and like it didn't feel like I couldn't sleep normally. So from a user experience standpoint, it's like, nah.
And I've never understood how anybody gets sleep in a sleep clinic.
I don't know.
Like, it's not your own bed, it's very foreign. Perhaps it's just my indication of I struggle to sleep on airplanes or cars or in sort of foreign environments. It's not my own little snuggly sanctuary.
Yeah, because that's what we've done. We've set up our sleep sanctuary, right? Where you go into this room which is not your bed, not your pillow, and yeah, it's a recipe for inaccurate data in my point. So although it's not a direct measure, I actually like more of the indirect measures because they impact my sleep less, but still give me quite valuable data. And when compared to when I have worn both at the same time, so an EEG and wearables, indirect wearables, they've been, for the most part, just as powerful. And the studies have shown much the same too. So to kind of give that example of, we've tried different types of armbands, and some armbands stick on the sheets, and they don't quite, you feel quite stuck.
They're quite matte and sticky.
Matte and sticky and quite high, and they can be quite uncomfortable. Some have lights that kind of beam out the side and blind you. Yeah, and some are got corners, and some are flatter, some are better. So it's really trying to find something that works for you. Like, actually, watch is another good example. When we've slept with our watches, it's
because you'd historically been a Garmin man when it comes to your watch or your wrist strap, and that's, you're going to go there. I know you've mentioned that once you get back into Ironman or other type of training, because for you, at least during the day when you're actually doing the training, it's probably the most accurate and powerful for you. Yeah,
but from a sleep perspective, I wouldn't rely on that.
Yeah.
Like, if again, when we're looking at picking from a client's perspective, where they've got to pick one device, right? That's a different story. But from my perspective, I want to have the right devices for everything and create that ecosystem, because that's what we do, right? But that comes down to the conversation around what is the goals? What are we trying to achieve here? What is the most important thing we need to be looking at? And what is the right wearable for you? Because like you, for example, are Apple Watch. And Apple Watch is great. If you want to do everything with the Apple Watch, it's not great. Because it has an amazing user experience, but because it has so many bells and whistles, no battery life.
Yes.
And with no battery life means you can't wear it all day and track all your activity throughout the day and then sleep with it, because it needs to be charged at some point. So it's the chicken or the egg. Like, I love all the bells and whistles that the Apple Watch has, but like the Garmin, that lasts 45 days, I think, or something ridiculous. It never runs out. Same with the Withings. Withings never runs out as well. There's such long battery lives in comparison to, but you do lose it in the user experience. which the Apple Watch does provide. So it's about trying to figure out the trade-offs for you and identifying what is the best wearable for you.
Because I love my Withings scan watch. I think it's way more elegant, and I think they like to call the difference now between your traditional watch as a timepiece, whereas oftentimes the digital watch is more of like the terminology of watch. And so I love the Withings scan watch as a timepiece. I think it's beautiful, and it does give a certain amount of integration into my phone. But being an Apple ecosystem now between my Mac and my iPhone and my Apple Watch, because it unlocks things, it helps, it's way better at just giving me the information that I need in a timely fashion. I don't have to turn off or sleep mode or do not disturb mode on different kind of devices. It all just syncs up. And so I think if I didn't have that, I would probably go back to the scan watch, only because it's a beautiful piece.
But you also don't use it for sleep too, right?
I don't, because it's a battery issue.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's identifying what is the primary cause. If you are looking to track your sleep, why buy an Apple Watch?
I also don't find the Apple Watch great in the sleep UI. So when I've gone into that, yes, it gives me the information, and perhaps just because I'm used to the Oura now, that I'm a bit of a product development design snob. I love beautiful user interface. I love beautiful human experience. Simple, intuitive, and I used to use the word delightful a lot when I was developing products, tech products specifically. And so delightful is really important in what we do with all of our products and experiences, is how do we create a delightful journey, a delightful interface. And while we may not have the budget of Apple to create really beautiful UI and delightful experiences, we get near enough. But I must admit, I do not find the Apple Watch and Apple Health as delightful as something like the Oura, because to me that gives me the information in a powerful way, in a logical and intuitive way that also aligns with yours. So again, when we're talking about partnerships and how we compare and contrast, having the same device so we can talk exactly the same apples to apples makes it really nice too.
Yeah, and to put it another way as well with the Apple, like, you're either going to use it for the day or for sleep.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer right there.
And why would you have the Apple Watch just for sleep? Because all the functionality is in the day. Like the data's good, don't get me wrong, the sleep data is pretty accurate. When we've assessed it, it's good.
Maybe I just need a new one.
Yeah, but even then, the battery life is still going to be the issue, right?
It is true.
And the cool thing with them is they actually bring out a CGM in their new watch, I believe. So looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
But again, the battery life, all these bells and whistles they bring to it just tanks the battery life, and terrible user experience as a result for that, because you can't use the full capacity of it. It has amazing capacity, but you can't use it because there's no battery life in it. And then if they were able to put the battery in, it's going to make it too big. So it's like,
I almost feel like the way that the Whoop, so if we want to go to the Whoop, charges their device would be such a smart way for the Apple Watch to charge it.
Yeah, that's very
So
important.
even if Apple created a slide-on battery pack that you can actually wear throughout the night, yes, it would increase the overall thickness of it on your wrist, unless they came up with something really smart.
At night or during the day, because at night I wouldn't want it because they're just going to be too bulky.
The profile would be too high.
But during the day, like when you don't need the full suite of you, like maybe when you're in work mode.
So if anybody from Apple's listening, maybe check out how Whoop charges their device.
Yeah, exactly.
That might be a game changer for you folk.
And to continue with, the Whoop is great from the perspective of the athlete. Like that's where the two major competitors in the sleep market, like it's the Oura and the Whoop, right? Like they are the two major competitors that are the general kind of wellness sleep trackers. They're the ones that are known for it. Where I would say the Whoop takes more of the active individual, the athlete, because that brings into the strain element. Yes, Oura has readiness, but I think Whoop definitely wins out in the ability to tag different events, so to do your daily log of what you did the day before.
Oura does as well, but I feel like Whoop does that better.
Way better, especially from a reporting standpoint, is that you can actually see the shifts from, for example, it could be wearing blue blockers before bed, or there's all these different tags you can pick, or eating too close to bed, or you can pick all these things and see what shifts your sleep. And it gives you a weekly and a monthly report that helps identify what is moving the dial for you
individually. Just a matter of time that Oura does that. It's a no-brainer.
They've just brought out they've increased their tags and the ability to tag, but the functionality is still so limited. So I'm really hoping they step the game up in that.
Have you noticed that Whoop has aligned their UI on the plus button like Oura? Yeah. There's some things that just work beautifully and intuitively, and it's great that they have that healthy competition of how do we understand and normalize maybe how the user interfaces with it. There's going to be some degree of alignment with what they do there.
Yeah, and like I love both of them for different reasons. I think, as an athlete, ex-athlete, like if I'm training hard, probably leaning on the Whoop, it's going to be a lot more accurate, especially with the ability to wear it on the arm or thing, or even in the clothing. I think that's quite cool, depending on the sport. But generally, like with the Oura, you can chuck on an O-sleeve and you're sorted as well. But I just find the activity tracking specifically from the Oura is not as detailed, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like you don't need to have all the insights unless you are training for something.
And you're looking at that kind of 2 to 5%. How do you really nail the training today?
And then again, when you compare like these two, so which are both, there's no screen on them, right? Like they're just the post hoc reasoning. So you're looking at the data after it's already happened. Yes, you can look at it live when you bring up your phone, but when you're training, you're not going to generally bring up your phone to look at it. So this is where the Garmin or the Apple Watch or the With things could become a lot more powerful, or the Fitbit or any of the kind of watch faces, because if I'm running, to be honest, I won't be relying on any of these. I'm going to my Garmin.
Yeah. Because you could figure out pace, you can figure out, okay, how am I actually looking from a cardiovascular response perspective? Yeah. Can I push it today? Can I not push it today? I love the post hoc reasoning or the post hoc analysis. It's powerful for that.
Yeah, so if you don't want the live data during the workout, absolutely these devices are great. But if you're training to hit certain zones or if you're going by speed or heart rate or whatever it is for you, I need my watch because I want to know if I'm on target or not. And so it's just, I guess the key thing here is understanding what you're looking for in a device, and is that device providing that for you? And this is something we do with our clients, is to help figure out what is best for them.
Yeah, I mean, I tried the Whoop as well. We both tried it at the same time, because whatever device we try, we both have one each. And I mean, I'm so glad that we encourage you to keep yours. I ended up sending mine back because of just another thing that I had to wear. I didn't feel like there were, for me right now in my state of conditioning and me building back up to a physical structure that eventually will be a lot more hardcore, I didn't feel like right now it was adding too much additional value to my life.
It comes down to what kind of training you're doing too, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
Like strength training, which is our primary focus at the moment, is... the Whoop doesn't even record it. I'll often find that my activity is not picked up by the Whoop. We do strength training most mornings.
And our heart rate is up. I can tell you that right now. Because we're warming up after our ice bath, and it's like, things are racing at that point.
But it doesn't pick it up. I have to do it manually, which I think is terrible, to be honest. Like, I think it should be picking that stuff up, because you can see the response like through the heart rate, but it's not intuitive enough to pick that up. Yes, it does pick up my basketball and more high intensity stuff and other activities, but I'm quite disappointed that it doesn't pick up strength workouts. And again, it's not very, it's marginal if you're doing strength training. I don't think there's much value in it as such, but it's when you're coming to more the kind of cardio-based endurance, I find, or adventure sports for that fact, or just like really repetitive kind of high-level training where you need to make sure that you're not overdoing it. Because, for example, if you're an NBA player, you're playing every 2 to 3 days, like your strain is going to be really high, so you need to really manage that. And that's where, or if you're an Ironman athlete like I was, I could see there's a lot of benefit in having the Whoop alongside maybe a Garmin, because I still want to be tracking my zones, just to identify the strain. But then Garmin has their own strain metrics too. They've all got their own kind of thing, so it's just figuring out. But that's where value comes a lot more, is because we always talk about this fine line between health and performance, right? Like you need to make sure you got that balance before you get to that point of injury or burnout, and just really riding that line really fine. And this is where, I mean, we've talked about in the past a couple of episodes about HRV, so heart rate variability, and we call it the lie detector of the body at Tailored.
And so I think for us, even just that measurement, understanding, you're right, body temperature, the readiness score, whatever device you choose, whether it's part of a bigger ecosystem of your technology stack or just a UI preference. But at the end of the day, getting back to how it plugs into a wellness experience or a wellness journey is that it's here to be additive and augmentative to your own feelings. Okay, for example, like you mentioned before, if for some reason your readiness on the Oura is showing it's decreasing and you notice your temperature is increasing, there's a variety of other metrics that are indicating perhaps your body is fighting or struggling to recover, then for you as a type A personality, which would always push through, and with your high pain threshold, like your pain threshold is through the roof compared to most people, and we talked about that in our very first episode, but for you, and especially for me too, push, it's beautiful to have some type of augmented device that helps us replug back in. It says, okay, actually, while my intellectual part of myself says, let's go, I've got a deadline, the biology, the body is saying I'm struggling with something. And it gave me permission. I don't know why I needed it, but the beautiful part of this for me and the relationship I have with my devices is it's almost like a best friend that says, hey, Rach, something's amiss. Perhaps you can take it down a notch with how far you push in today. And so that's the beautiful part I feel that wearables play in my life, because it is that sidekick, that best friend that knows my body more intimately, sometimes than I do, that says actually you have permission to take it easy today.
And on the contrary to that as well, for us it's often slowing us down because we're like driven, we want to do things.
Yeah.
But for others it's like that reminder, you're in a good place today, you should get out and do something. So there's also that side of it too. And so it's really trying to find that right device that supports you in that journey. But one thing I was going to continue on with talking about the sleep wearables, because we've talked about, the EEG, we've talked about the kind of wearable devices. There's other devices too. So we have devices that also go on our mattress. So we've got the Withing sleep mat is what we tried out first, which is quite accurate kind of device that we've enjoyed. Cool thing about that is it just lies underneath our bed. We just don't think about it. And we will often review that data and more of a macro perspective for us. Like for us, we've got our kind of other wearables that we track a bit more regularly. We track more regular, and we will often look at Withings to compare and contrast after the fact, because we often forget about it, to be honest, which is a great thing, because you can look at your sleep from a macro perspective. Am I improving or am I getting worse? And I think that's quite powerful in itself. But then we've also got a new sleep tracker last night. This is the one that arrived yesterday, which I'm really excited by and really looking forward to seeing how that goes, because this is not just a tracker, it helps augment our sleep. So that is in
real time.
In the real time, yeah. So this is the Sleep Me tracker. So we've got the Sleep Me Dock Pro, which is a device that is a mattress pad that has like an air conditioning for your bed. And we both have our own sides. So you got one side, I got my side, and we've set up our sleep architecture, what we think is the best thing for our sleep architecture, and what we've found over the, how long we had it, 3 years probably now?
Yeah, so we can change the temperature of the mattress pad throughout the course of the night.
Yeah.
Again, there's a lot of research that suggests that great sleep architecture has certain patterns to your body temperature.
Yeah, so for example, your core body temperature needs to attain deep restorative sleep needs to drop by like 1 to 2 degrees from the core body temperature. So obviously cooling that body down and lulling yourself into that sleep is going to be extremely powerful. But even throughout that sleep, there's little micro changes you can do throughout the night. But in talking with Sleep Me, they've mentioned that the average person has about 3 to 5 kind of changes throughout the night as they're scheduled. The cool thing with this tracker is it's going to track our live data and adjust it according to what we need. For example, if I get up and go to the bathroom, it's going to know I've gone to the bathroom, and it's going to either warm me up or cool me down to help me lull me back into sleep. And instead of making 3 to 5 adjustments, we're talking around 35 adjustments a night. So it's all these little micro things that there's no way prior to going to sleep predict. But because it's tracking my live metrics, it's augmenting my sleep into this beautiful sleep architecture. So that's what I'm really excited for really testing out. And again, having another tracker that we don't have to wear. Because my wrists get pretty full, especially when we're testing a whole bunch of them at once. Wrists and hands.
Yeah. Talk about a bed that snuggles you.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about an emotive element that is, oh my God, my bed, it cares for me, it snuggles me, it gives me delightful sleeps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hats off to Sleep Me and the team there. We've loved our engagement with them too and their vision for the future, and looking forward to continuing to work with them in other avenues, including potentially bringing them into our events. But that's, shh, you didn't hear that.
But yeah, so there's a whole range of devices you can get, and like I said, it's, do you want the gold standard that may not let you sleep as well as you'd like to, but you can do it as maybe a checkpoint. But again, the Dream 3 is hard to come by because it's a clinical grade device and it's an expensive device. It's $3,000.
I'm super grateful for them sending one of those to us for us to experiment with.
Yeah, and then you can go to more the wearables, which are more the general kind of consumer that most people generally go for an Oura or a Whoop. They're the kind of primary sleep wearables that most people use. I would say, and it's important to understand budget as well. Obviously, the Whoop is a little bit more expensive. The Oura is a little bit cheaper.
Fitbit's quite affordable. They've got a variety of options too.
Yeah, I don't enjoy their sleep architecture.
You're right, I agree.
It's just
clunky.
Really clunky, and maybe they've improved it recently. I need to check back and see where they're at, because that's the thing with the space. It's evolving so quickly.
And again, you run out of wrists and bits and pieces to be able to wear these things to trial them.
Yeah, and there's certain devices I don't want to remove.
How upset we get when we run out of battery on our Oura very rarely, or if we forget to wear it sometimes, or leave it, like if we go for a vacation and oh my gosh, I think we've only left it like once.
Yeah.
That never again. That goes in our bag. It's on our finger. We make sure.
Yeah, because like getting up on an early flight or something, and then you just like, it's on the charger while you're in the shower or something, and no.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've driven back for it and been too late to things because I've left it on the charger.
Talk about devotee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't miss data, especially not travel data, because that helps
travel
me.
Data is so fascinating and helpful.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a whole range of devices that you have to find for what works for you. And
but if you've got someone listening who doesn't have really any of it, or maybe has an old Fitbit or an old something that they're like, actually I'm really keen to investing in some other kind of augmented technology that can help me make better decisions, I would say my recommendation right now would always be the Oura.
Yeah, we start
myself.
We start most clients on the Oura because it is that, and from what we've found, is the best wellness tracker. Like, it's the most accurate and most easy to use and most powerful device that is very non-invasive. Yeah,
and for our exec clients, because we have a big Oura client dashboard that we pull in the API and all of the feeds with their permission, for us it makes sense within our ecosystem because that's how we deliver our premium care.
Yeah, and it's quite classy, right?
Like, it's very classy.
And
I have my O-Sleep on. I know you don't tend to have it on unless you're working out, which is fine, but I like my gold. And did you see my video how it's like a gold Oura that has not had this bad boy looks more like your silver after time?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, so I like my gold.
Yeah. Oh, I have to.
Spent more than that to make it a bit match my gold ecosystem.
Spent more than that?
Yeah. No, they're the same price now?
Oh, because
the gold's usually $100 US more.
Oh, maybe it was gold.
The gold and the stealth.
But no, but the thing is, I've got the Horizon where you got the Heritage, which I'm pretty sure ended up being the same kind of prices.
The prices have changed a little bit over time.
Yeah.
But we don't have the Gucci one.
Yeah. We don't have the Gucci one. But yeah. Keep in mind the functionality is the same.
If you've got the Gucci, this is where an O-sleeve would be like a mandate.
Yeah.
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 Don't want that gold stuff scratching off.
With wearables, these are things that you can, for the most part, fumble around yourself and figure out what you need to be doing and how you can improve these things. Obviously, these can be enhanced by getting practitioner support, but for the most part, these are consumer wearables. They're designed to help guide you through it and give you the insights you need, especially the good ones. But yeah, there's often definitely, and there's forums as well, and the forums can be really helpful, especially if you find a good person, but inside those forums, there is a lot of misdirection or misunderstanding of what is truly important, and we often find that they don't really give you the right information.
The couch specialists.
Yeah, the couch specialists, yeah.
They just sit on the couch and they think they know. They've done a variety of Google searches, which can give some accurate information, but oftentimes isn't the whole picture, and they're not qualified to be able to give better context.
Yeah, but sometimes you will find those that do have the qualifications that do go on the forum. So just keep in mind that, but yeah, generally practitioner support will help there, but where we're going to go to next is talking about clinical diagnostics and the big book you got there. This is something you actually need a clinician for. So like somebody from our team or a functional medicine doctor, somebody that understands functional testing. So what we're doing here is looking underneath the hood. So obviously we can think about the wearables as those kind of live checkpoint diagnostics for the most part. Most of them are live, if not daily kind of check-ins, and particularly when you look at something like sleep. But these are more of or can be a one-off, like if we're talking about genetics. But for our other kind of testing, functional testing, it can be more of a checkpoint data where we might be doing it every quarter or every 6 months or every year, depending on what we're trying to work on and what we're trying to understand. Depends on how frequently we do it. But this is definitely something in which you want that clinician support, because to truly understand this stuff is pretty confusing for the layman.
And you cannot tackle it all at one time.
No.
So for those that are watching on camera, I'm holding up the big, what we call is the tailored user instruction manual. When we bind all this kind of information into one booklet, that's one checkpoint. That's one checkpoint. And so very quickly, for the person who's not necessarily qualified or specializes in these different areas, it gets overwhelming fast. And even when we work with one-on-one client, and so this is maybe where we start to work through what does this look like for a one-on-one client, we won't tackle it all in one. They get this big book that we put together, we deliver to their door, and then over time we'll work on little pieces of the puzzle. For us, we design it so you get the biggest impact as fast as we can for the smallest amount of changes, and then we build into ongoing changes as we continue to lay the progressive foundations.
But the reason we do it all at once is because we want that time point. We want that stamped and as we started, because that's really important. Not necessarily as we started, because getting clinical diagnostics is a bit of a process about getting them to the individual, getting the samples on the weekend in which they have available. So once we're like, we generally will start getting results around the 8-week, 10-week kind of mark. But that's perfect for what we're doing, because obviously we've got our 4-pillar health philosophy, which is mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement. So it gives us a great opportunity while we're waiting for those results to come in and to get this big data set. We can start working on the fundamentals so we can set them up for success before we can really start making those precision changes.
Because some things just need to be true before you even look at yourself, like from a precise, tailored perspective. Yeah. So let's step back. Okay, so pretend I'm coming to you like I did 3.5 years ago, where I was a C-suite executive. I was having my own personal and bodily problems, health problems. Whether I'm an executive or not, it could be anyone, because not everybody that we work with to this level is an executive. But I'm having ongoing issues, but I'm really interested in becoming who I was born to being a great leader, to being a great mum, to feeling like I've got better clarity over what I'm supposed to do on the path ahead, and to ensure I have a really healthy life for as long as possible. So can you walk me through? I've just walked in or called you and I'm like, hey Luke, I hear you are the human optimization guru. I want to be able to dig deeper into my health. I want to be able to become this person where I know I'm missing certain things. It feels a bit confusing and lonely, but I'm looking for a specialist to help me demystify the path ahead. What would that look like?
Before I get into that, the cat's at the door. Oh no, he's here now. Okay. He was like scratching at the door, so he wants to get through.
Open the door a little bit. That little bug that keeps, I don't know if you've noticed, the little bug that just keeps flying around.
Okay, I think he's going through. You can probably shut it after he goes through.
I'll just leave it.
So yeah, that is our executive program, effectively. So our executive program is where we work with individuals like yourself and help them understand their unique biochemistry and physiology to really untap their true potential and to help them live longer, healthier lives. Because generally, if you reach that level, you've got the grit, the determination, the discipline to achieve these things, but you just need that really personalized direction, because you're generally at the apex of potentially a career pathway to an extent, but to reach that next level, it's really coming into the 1%ers. So it's like, how do we fine tune that individual, or you for this sake, so you can truly empower like so many underneath you? Because like why we deal with the executives or leaders generally is because they're leaders, is they help others. And because they're that shining beacon at the top, we can, by impacting them, we can impact so many others because they're great at passing on that information and helping empower others with these insights and information so they can live a better life.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're investing, because to be frank, we put our heart and souls into our clients and we genuinely are their biggest champions. Yeah. We want to see them thrive and shine and be vibrant. And so when we're putting our own time, energy, heart, sweat, tears in these people, we want to make sure that when they're successful, it has compounding results to much bigger success rather than just in a silo. And so for us, because we want to be the change we wish to see in the world, and we want to birth a whole new mechanism to lead graciously to actually solve the big problems of the world that leave positive impacts to generations to come, that the 500-year vision, we feel like the leaders are the space that create that compounding impact.
Yeah, and so those are the ones we work with, and we're very selective about that as well. We only pick the people that we want to work with, and we want to, excel.
Yeah.
And,
because you don't want to give the wrong kind of people the wrong kind of values an unfair advantage.
Yeah,
because there's enough of those already.
Yeah, that's effectively what we're giving, is an unfair advantage, because you're really a fine-tuned engine. It's like fine-tuning an F1 car. It's just generally pretty good, but for the most part, the executive or the high-performing person is generally done at the cost of themselves. So it's really helping them understand what they've done, what the cost has been for them to get to this point, unraveling all that, and then really unlocking their potential. And it's a fun journey to take clients on, because it's all very individual. It's really putting our detective hats on and really having all the data with us so we can really take it to a whole new level. There's no more guesswork.
No.
It's just precision.
And it's beautiful to become a companion for them, because we talk about being a champion on the sidelines, but like, you are a natural born coach. That's just, it's the music you play to. And so your natural inclination is to help support people to become that leader, that person they were born to be. And so we've got no time to lift jerks. Like, no interest in helping jerks grow and thrive. But at the same time, if we actually cared about that, the work we do probably would unwind that too.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe there is some reason for that.
But I don't. I'm not interested in spending my time and attention to unwind jerks.
Yeah.
Although I suppose that could have an outweighed benefit too. Yeah.
Yeah, but when we look at our core values, it's don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
We've got 5 of them or 6 of them, and I think number 1's don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I digress. Let's move on.
But yeah, so it's effectively the executive will get a book like that of diagnostics. We'll hook them up with wearables as well. So it's the combination of that live plus checkpoint data, so we can really monitor them and help support them around their daily decisions to make sure we're pushing them in that right direction. But again, understanding that the executives, they are time poor and trying to achieve a lot. So it's really trying to focus on, okay, what's that minimal viable change that we can make in their life to really put them in that right trajectory where they need to be, and making sure that we're not just doing it for performance, because that's oftentimes what people will focus on in this space, but performance with longevity. So it's that fine line of having that peak performance, but with that sustainability and that longevity.
Which includes their nuclear family or their relationships. And oftentimes we'll be working with their executive assistant or someone in the background too to try to knit into their lives in a seamless and, again, delightful way. But usually the first couple of weeks, I mean, we always do a long, we have our 4-pillar health assessment, and then we'll have like at least a 90-minute discovery session to unpack what's going on, look at their short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, really assess what's happening from a health ecosystem perspective, all the way from how they think and how they move, covering those sort of 4 pillars. And so for the first 2 to 3 weeks on the program, we normally, like you said, we get them set up with an Oura as a wearable device, so we can start to pull in the data and see on our master dashboard. Then we would order a variety of clinical diagnostic tests, which there is a rather large set that we do as a part of the Tailored Executive Program.
And we do have programs underneath the executive program, but our primary program where we spend most of our time is in the executive level.
Yeah, we have the tailored trifecta, which is the 3 kind of key tests that we recommend anybody to do to get a really good baseline fundamental understanding of who they are, how their body is made up, what their base code is, what kind of little gremlins are in their body that might be influencing that, and then also their exhaust. And so the tailored trifecta is a really powerful way to make that available for other people to improve biocuriosity and bioliteracy. But from the executive program, we have a much bigger aggregate of these tests that we undertake, and then that would be a mix of, it'd be a genetics. Do we want to actually list out some of the things that we do, or be more generic about what we're testing?
I think we can, like, for most people, most people won't quite understand the things. I think if we talk about it from an overpinning perspective, we're looking at your base code, such as your genetics. We're looking at the expression of those genes through some of your exhaust, and we're looking at toxicity.
Cardiovascular health.
Yeah, just like an overall kind of. We're covering everything really, to be honest. You can see by this book there's a whole bunch of data.
Okay, let's get back. But for that high level program, you can see how big this book is. There are a large number of tests involved. Most of them are checkpointed, like you mentioned, so it gives us a good baseline of understanding what is going on in your body right now, whether it be cardiovascular, thyroid, your exhaust, like how is your body processing the food and the lifestyle that you lead. It's hormones, it's gut health, it's looking at food sensitivities. But the longitudinal one that is probably the majority of this book is actually genetics. So your base code that you will have for the rest of your life. So unless CRISPR comes in, which it probably will, where we can do targeted gene editing, for the most part your genes will never change.
We still need the genetic testing to identify which ones you're going to snip and change.
Well, exactly.
Right?
You're going to have that, but what I'm saying is the genetic testing right now will last you for life. So unless there's some change, some intervention, some viral infection that changes your base code, which is quite unlikely, or technology that helps to change that, more targeted, then the genetics are your base code that you'll be running, your body runs on, and as a book, it will read for the rest of your life. And so that testing is powerful because we get to see not only what is the genetic base code of your body, but the other tests that are the checkpointed test tells us how it's currently being expressed. What are the chapters of the book that's being read? And are some of these chapters got villains in them, or if they've got like some type of protagonist? And so we get a feel for what's actually going on in your biosphere, so we know what we're working with long term, what are the more short-term acute issues. For example, if there's some type of environmental toxicity that is creating the environmental stress, or some type of gut dysbiosis or imbalance that is affecting your ability to think clearly or to be able to eat with control, for example.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be clear here is we do things a lot differently to any other kind of functional health practitioner or doctor or functional health doctor, where they'll often be a lot more targeted, and there's great value in that too, right? Like just by they've got gut issues, doing GI testing, identifying is there any pathogens in there, any like parasites or anything going on in the gut, which that's powerful. But we do that too, and we've done that, and we do it a lot, but we've found over time it just says one piece of the story. We like the full book.
Because we're interested in preventative, long term, not just acute care.
Yeah, and I think too often times, yes, don't get me wrong, this is not for everybody, this is not cheap. It's not cheap to do, but once you do this, like in the real scheme of things, it is invaluable. Like you can't put a price on this kind of data set because it gives you that checkpoint in time that you know, okay, this is where I was, and then you can track against that. And not only can we prove our work, because we can say, okay, let's do the retesting, let's see how we've moved that dial quantitatively, objectively. The data is not going to lie. But yeah, most people do things in a silo. So they'll either do GI testing, or they do hormone testing, or they do organic acid testing.
You still don't see the full picture.
You don't see the full picture. So it's really, what we like to do is just take this big snapshot, surveying across everything, and some tests we do just as a backup, just to make sure that they're not a concern. For example, toxicity testing, which not often people will do unless they've got the symptomology. And even with some clients, we've found that executive client had no symptomology of toxicity, but yet had high levels of toxicity across a wide spectrum of mercury, lead, mold toxicity and a few heavy non-metal toxicities.
Pesticides.
Plastics and
petroleum.
gasolines. There's so many things that you just often are in the background that gives us so many insights that we just aren't aware of, and that's why we like to do this wide-ranging snapshot. Yes, it's expensive up front, but like I said, that kind of value is invaluable, because the analogy I often like to use is if you had a leaky house, you would spend the money to fix that. But the thing is, you get so many houses in your lifetime. You can have so many houses and you can replace it as needed. But yet you would still invest I don't know, depending on the house, depends on how much it's going to cost. We're talking in the tens of thousands for the most part of houses. You would spend that to fix that house. But when it comes to people's body, they just sacrifice it. But yet you only get one.
One body.
You get one body for the rest of your life. And the sooner you intervene with that body, the longer and healthier and better quality of life you're going to have.
Yeah, I do want to put a bit of a relativity idea on this cost thing, because I think firstly it's an investment. So I personally, when I came to you 3.5 years ago, I was on a C-suite executive salary, and so for me I was able to negotiate and had a health stipend of $10,000 to be able to say, hey, look, you don't want to talk about it?
I think we talk about it, we don't say how much it was.
Okay, so let's snip that amount. I negotiated a health stipend around what I wanted to invest into my health and this sort of discovery journey. But I do want to say that it's not, for example, our tailored trifecta is out of scope for most people. So for example, and the prices might change as we go, this podcast is probably going to be around for decades, and so when we look back we're like, wow.
And we are seeing a lot of supply chain shifts at the moment.
Yeah, and so again, don't quote us on this, but for example, a single or a double panel DNA analysis will be around the $450 mark, $450. An oats test or an organic acids test, we're looking around, I think,
$350.
Yeah, maybe $400.
Yeah.
And then if we're looking at either GI, so gut health, the GI 360, or if they're having a lot of hormone issues, we might do Dutch. But for the GI 360, for the full, which is the premium one, I think it's around $800, $900.
$750, $800 maybe.
Currently, this is all New Zealand dollars. Yeah. So if wherever you are in the world, internet search the currency exchange from New Zealand dollars to your current currency, and then Dutch would be maybe $500.
Depends what Dutch we're doing. If we're doing Dutch plus or so there's nuances to all of this stuff, and there's cheaper versions if we want it, like for GI testing, like if we want a GI 360, which is our kind of gold standard, what we do, because it combines two technologies. It's got the PCR technology with the multi-TOF technology, so it gives you this full spectrum of analysis.
It asks what is there.
Yeah, so that's the PCR.
Yeah.
And then you've got the multi-TOF technology, which is using culturomics to culture the sample, essentially. But then you can also go cheaper, where you can just look at just basic PCR testing. So that'd be something like a GI map, which is just PCR without the multi-TOF technology.
And it's asking, is it there? So it already knows what it's looking for, and so it's not looking for everything or open to anything that your sample says. It's just looking for very specific things.
Yeah, so depending on your price range, there's variability in all of it, and it's just about finding, much like wearables, as the right thing for the right person. Yeah. Obviously, we have our set tests we do for the executives, which is more that kind of, let's pick the best tests and cover all bases. And we've assessed so many different labs for those best tests and what we've found the most functional, much like we have with the wearables. So yeah, there's so much nuance in here.
It's a scale, so it's into the scale. But I want to just put a pin in the fact that this is not unachievable for everyday people. And to be frank, people will sign up for a gym membership that within a year they've pretty much, and I doubt they're going as frequently as they should, but within a year of that gym membership just coming out and them not going, they could actually just invest in a tailored trifecta clinical diagnostic test set. Again, this is not difficult. This is for our friends and family who are not the uber wealthy. They're your nurses, your doctors, your teachers, the people that still really care about preventative health, but they don't necessarily take the time to invest in what that is. And so again, I just want to make sure that we cover that. For our executives, oftentimes they're on an executive salary with bonuses, and so when they start to look at what this means to their health and their future earning potential, like going to Stanford. What you learn here will have resounding impact to the rest of your life, and the connections you make in understanding your body will pay you back for years to come and increase your leadership capability, your capacity, your ability to have a more fulfilling life, because probably whatever's going on will help you within your family system. And because we work very holistically into that family unit, and we actually look out for the kids too. If we're working with, for example, when we're working with me, we're looking at my kids. If one child, in this case, was having a lot of behavioural issues, then we looked at tomatoes assessment. So we're looking at, okay, how is he processing his auditory signals that are influencing his behaviour? And so
which, as a result, influences you as the executive client. So so what you're saying there is we're looking at more than just the individual, because the family unit has such a big upstream impact to the individual, because oftentimes the biggest stress is not work, because work is what they do best at, and oftentimes it can be that family unit where one kid is just misbehaving and they're not sure why, and oftentimes it could be like a signaling processing issue such as that, or it could be something else going on in the family.
The partner could be having hormonal issues, still recovering from surgery or pregnancy or whatever it might be. Not making any assumptions around whether that partner is a male or female, because women are incredible leaders. Might I add here that the sad part, and this fires me up, is that not only is there a gender disparity, thankfully it's changing between leaders, women and men leaders, but we often find, again, to my frustration, is that we work predominantly with men executives than we do females. And I don't know if it's just because they just put up with it and get going, and they don't necessarily see a better future for themselves, and they just are grateful for what they've got, or they just don't prioritise their health in a way that they look at performance like they could be optimal, they could be running on all engines. And I don't know what that reason is, but that's a very frustrating thing for me to see. It's changing, but that's also why we're doing something very different with our upcoming retreats. More details to come, but this is just trying to raise the entire watermark and the tide for everyone, regardless of gender, race, whatever that is.
And this is where I often use the analogy with women and men, right? So often us men, we're diesels. We're like the Toyota Hilux. You can just throw stuff at us and we'll just keep on chugging along, and we don't have like super high performance. We can't, we're not like a F1 car, which like women are. Like they're the F1 kind of level car where they're finely tuned. Because of their hormones, their cycles, there's a lot more that can go wrong. But when that's finely tuned, it's a well-oiled machine and it just goes. But as I mentioned, it has to be well-oiled, because an F1 car, if there's something going wrong, it's catastrophic. It can have a significant impact. And that's why I know we will be getting more women as we go through this, because they've got significant issues. They just need to start prioritising themselves.
And they don't necessarily know what optimum feels like we've mentioned.
Yeah, and we mentioned this time and time again, is what you think is optimal right now, for many people is so much less than what you could possibly be.
Yeah.
So
imagine the changes for all leadership capability and capacity if we unlocked everyone in their Formula One car.
Enjoyment of life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Get one. Make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, walking us through the experience. And so within the first sort of 4 weeks of our programs, again, what we're doing is we're setting the executive or whomever we're working with up with some type of wearable. We're really not making too many changes. We're starting to get...
we want to get that checkpoint data.
We want checkpoint data. And then we're also doing the clinical diagnostic testing. So what we tend to do is, because we live in New Zealand, although we do have clients over in Australia as well and other parts of the world, and depending on where they are and the collection points and how far away they are from the lab, it will define when they have to do the collection, because of course we've got to work with the courier system to get the samples, which have a ticking clock on them, to the lab in time to be secured and tested. And so we would typically set aside a weekend. We've got a whole, what would we call it, a run sheet for a person to do the variety of testing that's required. And so essentially over the course of a weekend, we'd be doing a variety of sample collection, whether it be saliva, blood, urine, poo. Yeah, nothing quite fascinating like digging through your poo. Super insightful, by the way. And then so we'd get that shipped off. It takes around a week to finally land in the lab, wherever it might be. It'll be sent all out the world to find the right labs that have the best tests. And then it might take between 4 to 6 weeks to get the results back, depending on the specific sample in the lab testing it. Yeah. So there's like this 2-month experience.
I think it's important, really. Do you think it's important? I don't think it's important on the podcast.
No? Okay.
I think
like timelines?
Yeah, I don't think timelines is super important. That's what we start as like a onboarding client. We want to kind of...
I'm just talking about like this, we work on the basics at that point.
Yeah, I think we can talk about that. Yeah, so yeah, obviously can't. I think it's unwinding and just saying like, we're using the time, we obviously want the checkpoint data so we can see where they start at.
Yeah.
And then we're using that time to go through client discovery and making small changes, but not anything significant, because we want to get that checkpoint data. And once we get the data, we start kind of getting a lot more personalized into it, and we kind of build
less about the timelines.
Yeah, it's about timelines and less about, I don't know if we should be talking about like necessarily the types of still, because I'm just worried that it's going to,
put people off.
Okay, so we want to keep it like quiet. Oh, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, got it. Okay, cool. Where should I pull? Where should I come back from?
Just timelines, I think, like how it looks.
Yeah. So then we would have the person do the collection, whatever it might be, full barrage of testing, get that sent off, and then it might take 4 to 6 weeks to get some type of...
I think go prior to that step. So starting off with, we're using the initial period as a discovery, where there will be some quick wins in it, but most big part of that is us getting to know the executive client and how we can help.
So the first 4 weeks will look somewhat like that, but more generic.
Yeah, more generic, focusing on the mindset, lifestyle elements, and just really get to know who they are so we can untap their potential. Okay.
And so the first 4 to 6 weeks, while we're doing the collection and sending that off, is really getting to know the client, the person behind the Zoom call or the phone call, or in person if we're working directly in the same city and country. And that's really an unpack of many of the things we've talked about in the last several episodes, is deeply understanding how their mindset, lifestyle, nutrition and movement is playing out in their lives. All the way down to looking at their sleep, all the way down to getting them to do, nourishment journal, not only collecting on what they're actually eating, but who they're eating next to, how they're feeling while they're eating, what the environment is, as well as what and when. And so this is where we start to deeply discover who this remarkable individual is, so we can figure out how to best plan the course ahead.
Yeah, and where are those levers that we can just start to just push and pull to really make that transformational change. And then obviously we get the diagnostics back, and then we can start diving into more the precision care medicine, but precision care, where we can start to dive into the precision care and really just untap their potential. But again, like we talked about, it's not overwhelming them with this big book of data. Okay, we need to do all this right now. What is the one thing we're going to start with? And again, we're looking at that sustainable change, but with this data set where we can do it so much more targeted, so much more powerfully, and really understand those real powerful levers that we can push and pull to really make that significant change in their life.
Yeah, and depending on exactly where they're at with their own deficiencies, for example, or how much a genetic predisposition has been reading into their lives, certain targeted changes, whether it be very targeted clinical supplementation or lifestyle changes, you can start to see some changes or actual outcome and improvement in a variety of key elements within a couple of weeks. But again, we're trying to keep people understanding that there are these quick wins, that certainly depending on how their genetics or other elements or acute issues, whether it be a parasite infection or heavy metal toxicity, albeit we've talked about that in the past, it takes time to chelate them out safely so you don't overload the system from a toxicology perspective. But then we start to knit together this incredible kind of journey so that over time, and usually it's over a period of 12 months, but it could be longer, to really start to ramp them up into this Formula One car state.
Yeah, and the cool thing with the executives is they get their little dashboard of the key things that they need to be focusing on themselves. So, it can be overwhelming with these so much information coming at them. So we've created a simple little one-pager essentially that they can reflect upon if they're like lost to where they should go. It's like, okay, I need to focus on that.
These are your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And so breaking them down into the 4 key pillars. So at the end of the day, they know long-term this is something that is just essential for them to be able to overcome some of those predispositions or to help them get where they want to go for those long-term goals.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot that goes into that program, and we could spend a whole bunch of time unpacking that because there's so many elements of delight and ways in which we make their lives easier that I think is for another time and place.
And it's a surprise, right? I mean, the things we do, that when things show up on their doorstep or when they travel and something happens, the point being is we make sure that we integrate into their lives in a way that feels delightful and that we are absolutely the companion that they need to become who they were born to be.
Yeah. So I think, we could go into many rabbit holes with that. But I think we covered a lot today. That I think is a really good time to come back and reflect upon what is the one thing, because we always come back to what is the one thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw the question to you first, so you can have some time to think about it. But what is the one thing that you think in this podcast, if somebody just has been listening, they're very curious around their body, and that person that we've talked about that's been struggling, they're trying to figure out what's going on, they've been working on the fundamentals, but they just want a bit more proof or guidance. What is that one thing that person could do?
You know my story intimately, and I'm not too sure this is... Kitty, stop knocking the... And so you know my story most intimately, and so I'm not sure it's just one thing, but it's one concept for me. So you know that I've been battling with acne. Oh my gosh, Kitty, you are ridiculous. I think you can see it.
I love you too, buddy. Not right now.
Can you wait?
We're just about wrapping up. I know I haven't given you attention for a few hours, but stay tuned.
Such an attention sucker. Out of anybody, you probably know my story more intimately than anybody else. And I wouldn't say for me there's been a one thing. I'd say there's a one collection of things around increasing bioliteracy and being bio-curious in the process. One thing that I'm looking forward to sharing and talking about in the future, and I'm not saying that I'm absolutely cured, because again, real health is slow health and it's a process. But one thing I've battled with since I was probably about 16, 17 is chronic acne. Cystic chronic acne that would not respond to many things except for really hardcore medicine, and even then it wasn't my cure. It would be an ongoing issue.
It's a symptom fixer, right?
It's a symptom, okay. Oh, the number of specialists I have gone to that just went straight to medication. Nobody ever talked to me about things like managing stress, looking at gut health, looking at it as a core symptom of an ongoing underlying issue. And so I guess the journey that we had when we started 3.5 years ago, I'd come to the point that I've accepted that that was my fate, that this is just an ongoing issue that I always have and I don't know the answer. But the beauty of working under the tailored model and working with you is that, and even with me, is I'm not satisfied with a no. I'm just not. That's more of a challenge than anything. And so this deep curiosity of what on earth is under this hood that is working in a way that is not absolutely optimal, that's not a shining beacon of vibrant health. And the one thing is a collective paradigm of get really curious. And for us, the curiosity, because I'd already done so many things to help try to improve my health, at that point, the guesswork was just stupidity. We could sit here going around in circles for years and years, like I have, to try to solve this problem, and I'm not getting anywhere. And the amount of money I spent on product, oh my Lord, that is a different conversation.
And let's define the product as well. This is product to mask or to, like, these are things that are going on top of.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily looking at the root cause.
No, exactly.
It's like it's all masking the symptoms, right?
Yeah. And so for me, what was the biggest and most powerful aha moment was the trifecta, so the tailored trifecta, plus the hormones, so I guess 4 tests. One in particular was the most powerful in the aha moments because that underpins everything, and that was genetics. So for me, the genetic understanding and delving into this part of my instruction manual and understanding why things were squeaky and why my body wasn't metabolizing certain hormones correctly was the most profound. because I could look at the organic acids in the exhaust of my body, and I could look at my hormones, which would tell me that they're high, but they didn't tell me why. So going back to the genetics and understanding that my estrogen clearance pathways, and then also the gut health, and looking at, there's a specific set of bacteria that will excrete this enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, and its function is to cleave certain attachments, or conjugates they're called, that my body's trying to excrete. And one of those conjugates was an estrogen conjugate, that my body was desperately trying to release the estrogen from my body outside of the pool of broth that happens over the monthly cycle. And this beta-glucuronidase enzyme, that was confirmed in my gut testing, was cleaving, and so it would break up this bond that was trying to get my body to excrete it, and so the estrogen would reabsorb. But looking at my genetics, I could also see that my body had a hard time even converting it, like actually doing those two different detoxification processes. So while I'm just talking about one specific hormone, there's a variety of hormones that were influenced by that whole kind of mismatch and squeaky wheel.
And that's a perfect analogy for sharing why we like to do the full snapshot, is because there's this confirmation across tests. And there's something beautiful and powerful about that we can show an individual. These went to different labs, and the results have come back and they tell a story. And that is a beautiful thing in itself.
And then for somebody who's been fighting, I've been in tears for a long period of time trying to fight this acne situation. And to be frank, if you haven't had chronic acne, you will never understand. You just simply, it does not get through to your brain about how debilitating emotionally it is to feel like you've got welts on your face, and that's what people see, and it's painful. And so I get people who've never suffered from chronic acne say, it's not so bad, like you're fine, and you don't get it. Like you will never get it unless you are in that situation for years and years fighting to have clear skin. And if you are listening and you've had issues with this, I know you get it. And so be that sufferer for so long, and this is just one type of condition, one symptom, and to finally have, oh my God, a penny dropped. That explains everything. And then get this, we'd already made a whole bunch of changes that was supporting my genetics, but there was one compound, one chemical compound that from a genetic perspective would help grease those wheels the most. And within about a month of taking that one complex, that one compound to help that particular enzyme do its thing, I noticed remarkable changes in my skin. I was like, the light switch has completely gone off. And I'm not saying that one thing was the thing that changed everything in a silo, but with all the other things that I was doing, that was like the cherry on top that just flicked the switch. And so I know I've gone on long about this, but I will never look back, and I simply do not accept the fact that this type of testing is a nice to have. I think it's a fundamental right for every single human being to have this testing, so they can have a benevolent type of champion or people like us that can take them through this journey and finally give them the answers they're looking for, because it nails my why, that the path to vibrant well-being shouldn't be this confusing or lonely, and this type of stuff helps to avoid and alleviate the confusion and the loneliness, particularly when you've got people like us championing and fighting for people to actually solve the problems rather than sit here suffering from the symptoms.
And hence why your Instagram hanger is Unmasked Executive, right? And a big part of this, there's a whole different, what's the word? There's a whole lot of different parts to that, right? There's stories behind that. There's unmasking, where you no longer rely on makeup like you used to rely on it. There's so much you've unmasked from the behaviors which happen in the workplace, unmasking from previous relationships. And that's your unbecoming and becoming who you're designed to be. And it's been a beautiful story to watch, and I think that was a great way to articulate what we've been saying. I'm going to say get curious around what track you're going to go for. Because just get a tracker. Like, there's no harm, no foul. Like, yes, it may be a little bit of money, but it's marginal in what impact it could have, especially if you pick a good one. So obviously the ones we've talked about today will hopefully give you some insights. We will be doing further conversations around which wearable you should be considering.
I think as
and
well.
We've got a few blog posts as well. But if you're looking at one wearable that's just a general wellness tracker that is very invasive, doesn't impact your life, we go with the Oura. It would be our general go-to, as we've alluded to in this podcast. So yeah, get a tracker of some sort. Obviously it depends on what your life is and what your goals are. If you're unsure and you're tossing between a few, obviously we've tested them all. Just reach out to us and we will confirm which one we think would probably be best for you and why.
Based on your unique situation.
Yeah, unique situation.
We've obviously got our bias,
yeah.
But at the same time, we'd like to think we're quite pragmatic in finding the right solution for your specific needs.
Yeah, and we do. For many clients, they often won't go for an Oura, like especially the athletes. Athletes will generally push towards more of Whoop because it's just more applicable to them, or towards a Garmin or whatever. Long story short is just start tracking. And even if you don't have the money to put towards a device, track in a spreadsheet. Just every day, just say, what is my energy today, or how did I sleep? So on a 1 to 10 scale, put those down, or do the 7 points if you really want to go that far. But again, pick one thing, start with how do you feel today?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that knits beautifully into a previous episode where we talked about like the observing is the critical part of finding that path. Because if you don't even know what a path to anything, let alone your health, looks like, then you're lost. If you don't even think, okay, this is how I'm feeling to know I'm on the right path, then it doesn't matter what path you're on because you're heading to nowhere.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that is us.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Thank you for that. Well done. Always a pleasure. And that's a wrap.
Breakfast time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. We are so grateful for you being here. We want to help make the path to vibrant well-being less lonely and confusing. So please let us know how we can do that better. Like, subscribe, and share with your loved ones who you think could benefit from these topics, because that raises the bar for everyone.